had something go right over the top of us that looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast. We just had something go right over the top of us that looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast.
So basically what we're saying is that the pre-Roman Britain had a vastly superior understanding of sustainability than we do now.
I could imagine they did.
Now, is that possibly just a result of how few of them there were? Because one of the things about the human race now is they can bend the planet to their will. Of course, when there was only, let's just say, 10 million people on planet Earth, that was completely out of the question. If you went outside of the village at night, there's a very good chance you'll never be seen again.
Yeah.
Which vastly changes, obviously nowadays you can get into a car and drive anywhere you want at any hour of the night, and you're almost certain if you don't get there, people are going to start asking questions.
There's a log of what happened, yeah. It was a completely different world, and it would be foolish of me to assume to speculate on how you would live through something like that. I couldn't imagine going through an English winter in a stone hut with a grass roof and a little log fire, especially out in Wiltshire where this place is. So, yet alone, I can't begin to relate to the drivers of an individual of that time. But to be totally reliant on the land, totally reliant on the skill set that was handed down from generations to generations to you, be it whatever skill set that was, it was a completely different world back then. And the fact that it was a completely different world back then, I just find it very strange to rely on the word of an archaeologist that's dug something up to say that this is definitely what it was, when we don't know for 100% certainty that these pots that were found were used for this, or that they're making assumptions. That's all they are. That's all they can do.
Well, did they claim them? They didn't really claim them. All we know is that the Bronze Age people were there.
Yeah, we don't have any art to signify that.
There's no connection between the Bronze Age people and those stones of any real gravitas, any real strength. There's no proof that Bronze Age people could build a 500,000 ton mound. But by burying away and, let's face it, basically ruining the mound, we have discovered that it is built up in lots and lots of layers. And of course there have been all kinds of theories that it's on top of a spring and all the rest of it.
Yeah. Just so everyone understands, we're talking about Silbury Hill here.
Yes.
Most of the mountain, yeah.
Well, Silbury Hill is so close to the mound, they can't be unrelated.
Yes, they can't be unrelated.
Even if one was built by a different civilization because of the other, they're still related. Because they're all in the same place. Let's just go through a couple of possibilities of a giant mound that appears to have similar proportions to what some people claim is called the Tholus on Mars. Now, later pictures of the Tholus show it to be a volcano, which doesn't seem to have the same proportions. It doesn't actually look that similar, as far as I can see, but that could have just been the imaging in the 70s compared to what we can see now. I'll put a little shot of that up on the screen. But even if these were a discovery by people who've made them earlier, that could indicate that there is a connection with Mars.
Yes, from what I've seen of the images, it's very, very similar, isn't it? It's frighteningly similar in circumference, the way the geometrically shape of it.
And also, just having seen it in reality, there's something
unearthly about
something
it.
about the sort of the top structure of it does seem incredibly similar to what appears to be what they photographed on Mars. And yet, and of course, it's completely inexplicable. That is the thing. To build something that weighs as much as one of the Empire State Building towers in 2500 BC, shows a dedication and organisation that
it would have taken the manpower of the whole country, wouldn't it? Really,
every single. I think I forget what it is. It's something like 4 million man hours. I mean, I don't really see how you could even come up with a reasonable estimate of that. We don't know how far away the Earth was brought from. There's.
I mean, people's great grandchildren would have still been building it after their ancestors started it for that many hours.
And even if it was like a water tower or whatever, is it really worth that? I mean, who would even remember why they were building it after that long? Yeah. The sort of incantation of everyone speaking. It just seems to me like that structure is formed by some other means than carrying mud.
Well, the structure is mainly comprised of clay and limestone, isn't it? And
it's built in layers.
And layers and rub and shingle and stuff like that. Nothing more. There's no bodies buried in there. There's no artifacts in there. There is no rooms in there. It's just a mound.
Yeah, they never put the people who died building it inside of it.
No.
Which, you would think if you died building something, you'd want to kind of add to the mass of it.
Yeah, you probably want to get involved.
So it's all very, very confusing. There isn't actually any evidence that it was built by people at all, really. I mean, okay, you can talk about it in terms of method.
And the people that were alive around the time of the carbon dating of it, but other than that, it's a mystery of how people of that time would do it and why they would do it. The fact that there was no one buried in it, is just because all the other mounds surrounding it, like the Sanctuary and Overton Hill and so forth, they're actual burial mounds. And they're only a few hundred meters away. So why wouldn't the biggest mound of them all have someone buried within it, or have some sort of religious?
Well, they diverted the river specifically
for it, yeah.
Around sort of a couple of 100 meters around it. Mm. It's possible, I suppose, they brought materials to build the mound on the river, but they diverted the river a long way. Well, we don't know whether they diverted the river before or after.
I mean, clay, limestone, and rub and shingles are easier to transport,
and they're everywhere around there anyway.
Yeah, exactly, and they're solid rock. As always in our discussions, we tend to ask more questions than we answer.
There doesn't seem to be.
There doesn't seem to be something you can put your finger on to say this must be it. Is there really? In conclusion, there isn't a lot you can put your finger on to say this is why it was used and this is how it was done. And this was the technology at the time that achieved it. There's nothing of that on the mainstream at all. There's guesses and there are theories.
I think we're looking at something similar to the pyramids here.
Yeah.
Something that people have come along later and investigated and maybe even mutilated a little and left all kinds of implements that got buried over time. I mean, we can't say for sure that any of those antler picks were buried at the same time with the stones. The stones must have just been encountered. Now, it's not possible that it was a natural event that did this. They're too well spaced. They're too well ordered. It had to have been there for a reason. Is it possible that this stone was just used by people who didn't know better and just happens to be resistant to the weather? It is possible, but I think there is a likelihood that if you can move a stone 110 tons, 30 kilometres, you have some understanding of its property.
Yeah. And its use. I mean, because it's the same stone, every stone is the same type of stone. So this stone was obviously selected for its properties.
Well, maybe.
For one thing.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. If it's not a naturally occurring stone, you can pick a stone up from anywhere. But if it's not a naturally occurring stone, that you've taken the effort to move 20, 30 miles.
Every single way of looking at this, it starts to suggest to me of some other kind of capability. And I don't think it was a technological capability. Because there's no sign these people had anything like that in their lives.
No.
These people had some
They-
spiritual power.
They were tapped into a force that we have lost knowledge of.
The modern scientific world doesn't want anything to do with.
Yes.
I don't know that as a society we've completely lost knowledge of it. I think perhaps it's in all sorts of circles on planet Earth. But to me, whether it is a way of... But whatever state of mind these people were capable of reaching was right at the core of their society.
Yes.
And had to be connected to
And
the
it was
means.
visual to them as well. It wasn't something that was just a thought and a theory. They could see this having effects. They could, they could live.
Absolutely,
it
it was a realisable.
It was tangible. It wasn't something that was hearsay or word. They when they meditated, when the shamans or whoever their leaders were, tried to harmonize with the resonance of with their chanting and so forth. It must have had some sort of effect.
Of course, because they moved all these incredible stones to enhance it.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Exactly.